So good morning, students. Let us commence the session. I think today onwards you are going to work with your weekly test score. So do well, and I suggest you all please go through the PPTs which are used for the portion. Right, just go through that PPTs. It's enough because already we have packed with lots of MCQs as well as the contents what was covered in the PPT is enough for you to go through and score very good marks in your weekly test score. Right? Do it well. All the best. So let us commence today's session. So today we are commencing our fourth unit. So before getting into the fourth unit, a glimpse of third unit that we could able to recap with the MCQ. Right. So please respond your answers in the chat. The MCQs will test your fundamentals only. Right. The input output package usually used with Java is right. I think sometimes these types of questions will treat you that it was very silly, right? But it's not like that. Even though you are ready to work with advanced concepts, how good you are with the fundamentals, right? So that's the thing. So what would be the answer?
Sir, voice is not audible, sir.
Yes, it's clear now.
Yes, sir, now okay, sir.
So this could be the glimpse of your unit 3. Please respond or post it in the chat box. So what would be the best option? So we are getting options as B, right? Very good. Java.io. Second question. Can data flow through a given stream in both directions? Their question is whether stream will flow in both directions. That's their question. What would be the best option? Stream is nothing but flow of data, right? What would be the best option? Post it in the chat. Yes. Am I getting answers? People are supplying answers as D. Huh? Ultimately, can data flow through a given stream in both directions? It is not possible, right? First, I have to say no. It's a type of tricky question. So either it may work for input or output, right? So that's the thing. By seeing the sentence only one direction at a time, most of you have been diverted over that. But before that, you have a tag word yes, right? So don't forget that. So it's no actually. It will not flow in both the direction. Either I could able to use it for read operation or write operation, right? So while you are going to learn about your computer architecture, you will come to know about the data hazards. So in that you could able to see types of hazards will come. Read after write, write after read, read after read, write after write. So likewise, such type of hazards will be there while we are going to work with a stream. Okay. So ultimately, it's not possible that their data will not flow in both the direction. Either it may flow for a read or for write, any one of the content only. Third one. What is the name of the stream that connects two running programs? Something fundamentally it is checking your knowledge on this. Name of the stream that connects two running programs. What would be the best option? Yes, for question number 3. I think people are searching other side in their mobile, right? People who are working with a laptop. Or a parallel window has been opened and people are searching in Google to respond for this. Any answers? No answers till now. What would be the best option? Could be pipe. What is the purpose of pipe? The output of one program will be given as input of the another program using the concept called a pipe, right? Piped input stream. Okay, so that's the term. Pipe represents the output of one program will be given as the input for the another program. So that's the term. Right. Next question. So here also you have to think about the corresponding taglines and move forward. Can a stream act as a data source for another stream? Can a stream act as a data source for another stream? So I think the previous question will help you to solve this question. Can a stream act as a data source for another stream? Yes. Answers? Either right or wrong. Post it in the chat. Let us check. Yes. We're getting some answers. So what would be the best option? It could be C. Yes, some streams can be connected together. That's what the term that what we are working with a pipe. Okay. Next. What is a buffer? So you have to convey the answer here pertaining to our streams. Might be, I think, people who are familiar with the operating system concepts, computer architecture, ready to convey the term. Buffer is nothing but a temporary storage area. It's a general terminology in computer science for all core engineering subjects. So pertaining to stream, what would be the answer for buffer? People are supplying answers as yeah, that's a very good one. A section of memory used as a staging area for I/O data, right? So that could be the good cause. What is a stream that transforms data in some way? Data in some way called, right? Some way. Some way means some other pattern, right? This question is somewhat rigid to answer, right? This could be the processing stream because yesterday we have come across a term called serialization, right? So this is the question related to that serialization. So I could able to convert my object into stream of bytes, right? So that can be performed by these types of entities only. So processing stream, right? I could able to use that object to access the corresponding data member. Okay, so that's possible. Yes, a stream that is intended for general I/O, not usually character data. So this I/O stream is not useful for character data. What does it mean? So which one you use? Might be these are all the classes that you have come across. I found that Gayatri ma'am, myself, and Shamni ma'am have given a complete overview, as well as Aarti ma'am have given you a complete overview on these things also, pertaining to some of the classes present in this option. Right. So what could be the best option for question number 7? Supplying C. Okay. Yes, that's the thing. Right. Reader, writer are general, which are related to our high-level formats. Right. So they are mentioned clearly. It's not about character. So odd man out is byte stream only. Yes. What's the next one? What's the name of the abstract base class for streams dealing with a character input? Right. Character input. To be very specific. I think Gayatri ma'am have given you a detailed slide on this. Yes, answer is?
Reader.
That could be the best answer, right? Reader. Next question. So the character data used inside a Java program exactly the same format as the character data in a text file written by Java. written by Java. You need to give away two answers. First, you have a question. The first answer will follow the objective of your second question. Is the character data used inside a Java program exactly the same format? The first day of class I have shown you, right? By opening a Java file, by opening a class file. Java file consists of English letters. While I am going to open my class file, it consists of what type of characters they have. Right? So what could be the best option? Question number 9. People are supplying answers as B. Right. Good. That's it. No, right? So because I have given you that explanation, but what's the subsequent data follows? Text files are written in UTF format, right? So which is completely different. And also I want to convey you here. So this is the version, the old one, uses 16-bit character data. Last one, non-character input. What could be the base class? Non-character input. What would be the best one? I think people are familiarized with streams, right? So that's the case. That could be the complete glimpse of our IO streams, right? So input stream and output stream separately we have seen. So we have seen around 9 classes in both streams. Okay, as well as separately we have seen file programming. So what would be the different ways that I could able to read and write data into files? So what are all the ways that I could able to receive inputs and what are all the ways that I could able to write outputs? So that's also I could able to see along with some of the advanced features that are being projected in JDK 14, right? So everything that we have covered over on unit 3. Okay, so that could be the glimpse. So today onwards, we are going to work with an interesting unit. This would help you to make yourself uh, an enriched fellow in Java, right? This could be the main topic. If you convey that you know Java, if people have found out that you have mentioned Java in the resume, the first question they will ask from this unit only, right? Because the process of most of the operating system process are being mentioned over there, as well as uh, the chapter will help you for concurrency. Okay, concurrency. Otherwise, you could able to term it in a hardware term called parallel processing. So for all those things, Java supports. Right? I think this could be the first flavor that made Java to be a famous one in the market. They have developed this, right? They have developed with the uh, content of or simulated the working nature of the internal memory management also. So that much interesting features. I would be telling that most of these concepts that I could play with my RAM, primary storage memory, right? So what are all the concepts which are that we are going to see here? So the unit 4 is completely focusing on multi-threading, but we have some jargon terms related to multi-threading. We want to clarify with that and we have to move forward to understand and carry over in this. Right? So let us commence with the session. This could be the basic image which will tell you what is multi-threading. The first box you could be able to see there is only one thread. Second box you could be able to see there are 3 threads are available. What is meant by thread? Thread is a flow of control inside a single program. Flow of control inside a single program, right? So when you are going to execute your program, how the flow of control will be there? Flow of control will first go to the main method. From that, if any functions are being called, it will travel to the corresponding functions. Even when it is going to get into the function, what would be any orders, right? So do I have any priority to move forward? No. So what would be the actual flow of control within the program, right? How the tracing will happen, right? That's what the flow of control, right? So can I do? Could I able to move for more than one flow of control? For example, assume that there is a program. That program consists of three functions. Okay, main is also a function. User defined function one, user defined function two. Main has given direction to work parallelly on function one and function two. Otherwise, if you are going to convey in terms of examples in the in the lenient examples, you have 10,000 numbers. I have grouped 1,000 numbers separately. I'm going to perform shorting on all those 1,000 numbers, all those 10,000 numbers in the cluster of 1,000 numbers parallelly. Right? Could I able to do that? To achieve, to accomplish these type of things, I need to move for this multi-threading, right? As well as practical applications. If you want to convey, you have developed a Java application in the web server, right? Whoever want to access your web application, how they will access, right? What could be the accessible capacity of your corresponding application? That will be decided by these threads only. At a time, these many number of users can access. For every user, a thread will be created. They will be accessing and using this program. Okay, so that's the next level in terms of client server technology or peer to peer technology, whatever may be, right? So that could be the accomplished case that we are going to work with. Even if more number of users are accessing the common service access point in for internet, so in that case, these many number of users could be allowed. So the next user could not be allowed until the user is being released from the environment. That's also the practical example where we could able to talk about multi-threading. Multi-threading is nothing but multiple flow of control inside a single program, right? Multiple flow of control inside a single program. How it can be practically seen? I think this slide will help you, right? For every program, these are all the things that are associated with you in the RAM, right? If it is a normal program, you could able to see that your code memory, your data memory, the corresponding augmentations, whatever you have will be partitioned like this. The registers and the system stack is being available for the corresponding thread. Okay, if it is a single thread. When multiple threads are going to generated, for all those things, registers and stack will be separate. Right? So whether what would be the procedure here over on that? The data structures are being I could able to see virtually they are going to be recreated. Okay, so that could be the correct term. Don't think that these are going to be the hardwares. No, in the software part, all these things are going to be virtually created. How many number of threads I am going to create? That many number of address space will be created. The term is very very important. Address space will be created. Okay, so in the address space, the corresponding data structures. Register is a data structure. Stack is a data structure. All these data structures are individually created for everything. So they will manage through that. That's the reason why I could able to see the future of concurrency in the single program. That could be the case. That's the difference between the normal program. So first one is a normal program. Second one, they have created three threads. That's what your multi-threaded program, right? Yeah, multi-threading. How it happens. For every thread, you have a separate stack and register. That was virtually recreated in the address space. Address space belongs to your RAM. So please remember, the diagram has shown you the complete box that reflects your RAM space. Like some of the terms that what I need to differentiate. Okay, so I think this could give you actually what would be the multi-threading is. Okay, right side you could able to see multi-processing. These two terms, how we have to differentiate. Multi-processing means more than one CPU. Please remember. Okay, more than one CPU. For every CPU, one process will be attached with it. Multi-processing, right? That's something different. But multi-threading is not like that. So the single CPU is having control between different threads. Nothing but it is switching over between their corresponding tasks. The higher level of multi-threading will be focused on multitasking. I'll show you. Right? So the difference between multi-threading and multi-processing. See, the campus recruiters will ask you what is the difference. You know multi-threading? Okay, from multi-threading, how can you differentiate it from multi-processing, multitasking, multi-programming? These are all the three terms they will ask you to verify your stuff on multi-threading. Okay, so that's the reason why I'm focusing this topic. So how multi-threading and multi-processing will differ. In multi-processing, you will have only one CPU that is going to perform multiple flow of control inside a single program. So here multiple programs are there, that is also being possible. So please remember. So you could be able to see process level multitasking, thread level multitasking. I will show you, right? Multi-processing represents more than one CPU. That is the main difference here. Difference between multi-threading and multi-processing is here more than one CPU will be there. So don't have a vision that CPU consists of 4 cores, right? So that could be the subset of CPUs only. This is what your multitasking is actually, right? The computer could be able to perform multiple tasks. I will work in the Word, parallelly I will listen music in my YouTube, right? As well as I will open one more tab and I will browse, right? So multiple tasks will happen. So within the single task, I could be able to perform multiple tasks again, right? So this is what multitasking is actually. What is multitasking? To understand multitasking, this diagram will help you. Right? I could be able to perform multiple tasks at a time in my PC. Right? I could be able to type in the Word document. I'm opening a browser and I'm listening to a music. As well as I could be able to open one more tab in the same browser. I'm going to download a movie that is running for around 1.5 GB. That's also going to be downloaded. So likewise, multiple tasks can be performed. That is what multitasking, right? This is process level multitasking. So please remember process level multitasking. But what we are going to study in Java, we are going to work with the low level multitasking. I'll show you how it would be, right? Anybody could able to tell me what it was actually? This is another important term in. Can anybody of you interpret what does this term represents? Already you know about the basic building block of computers, right? Block diagram of computers. Everyone will know. You have an input unit, you have an output unit. So between them, you have a CPU. It consists of 3 layers. First layer is ALU. Second layer is my control unit. Third layer is my memory unit. I will draw arrows between these people, and a double-headed arrow will be traveling from control unit to memory unit. I have 2 arrows will be flowing from control unit to ALU, right? So this could be the basic thing. But what this concept is talking about, right? Any guesses? People who are flavored in computer science from their schooling, right? Computer science mere attracts not only programming, core engineering fundamental concepts also will play a vital role here, right? Programming will be used to implement such concepts. That's it. So this diagram will depict you about multi-programming, right? Multi-programming. What is multi-programming? The term keeping more than one program at a time in the RAM. That is called multi-programming. Keeping more than one program at a time in the RAM. That is called multi-programming, right? So in the RAM, once your once your OS is going to be booted, you will get the copy of the OS in your RAM. If your RAM is 8 GB, means 2 GB will be allocated for your, or 1 GB will be allocated for your OS, depending upon your OS core. 1 GB you will have a swap space. Okay, that is the place where we will perform operations. So remaining you have 6 GB server. Within these 6 GBs only, the operations whatever you are carrying out will be happening over there. You are going to open a browser. You are going to perform a writing a program, and you are going to run the program the whole day. Right? You are hosting a webinar. So whatever may be, whatever the task that you are going to do, that will perform within this 6 GB only. You have a swap space of 1 GB, right? The communication happening between your application layer, sorry, your application program and system software which is available in the RAM, your OS image, that will be happening between that 1 GB space only, the address space, right? So the concept of multi-programming is nothing but keeping more than one program at a time in the RAM. That is what the term of multi-programming. What is the difference between multi-threading and multi-programming, right? Within job A, multi-threading can be applicable, right? So within job A, I could able to perform a multi-threading. Within job B, I could able to perform multi-threading. So within a job, I could able to perform multi-threading pertaining to this diagram, right? I have said, right, for multi-programming, keeping more than one program at a time in the RAM. Every program I could able to perform multi-threading. Within a program, I could able to perform multi-threading. That is the difference between multi-threading and multi-programming. So this could be the actual cost that what we have to see. Multitasking. Multitasking. Right? So process-based multitasking, thread-based multitasking. Process-based multitasking was shown here. Okay. Thread-based multitasking is nothing but task 2. You could able to see. For that single task also going to be performed parallelly over there. So that's what the term by using 3 threads, they are running parallelism within that or concurrency within that task 2. Right? This is what thread level parallelism. Right? Task level, process level parallelism, thread level parallelism. That is what being mentioned over there. Process based and thread based. What is meant by process? Pertaining to OS, we have a common definition: programming execution, right? Programming execution. So that's what the term process based multitasking. So I want to condemn the term here. They have mentioned multiprocessing, but I don't want to mention it. But most of the textbooks are talking about this parallelly. But I suggest to you, don't use the term multiprocessing here, right? Even I could remove it from the slide also later period. Process-based multitasking is the one which will talk about this. Okay. So multiple tasks are performed by the single computer. So here the CPU may be single or double, single or multiple. To keeping in that aspect only, they have mentioned as multiprocessing. Okay, but actually process-based multitasking is nothing but this is what already I have conveyed you, right? By working on your PC as a single user, you can perform multiple number of jobs. You can hear a audio in YouTube. You will work in the Word document parallelly. In the browser, you are going to perform one more download. So these are all nothing but process-based multitasking, right? So when you are going to accomplish your task in any one of the process parallelly, that will end up with my thread-based multitasking. So within the single program, I'm going to work with multiple flow control, right? So the same address space is being shared by the threads. This is what I have shown here. Same address space. Here in the first block, only one thread is occupying the address space. But how can we use this address space effectively? That had created the inventors to come with the concept of, because I won't use all the address spaces effectively in the normal program. I could able to use the address space in a effective way, right? Even I could able to create number of threads, right? My program would have a capacity. So up to that limit, I could able to work with that. How can I find out that my program is having this much of capacity, this many number of threads I could able to create, right? Depends upon your RAM size, right? Depends upon your RAM size, you could be able to determine number of threads, right? So that could be the actual discussion. Thread is the lightweight process. So just to remember with it, okay? Thread is the lightweight process. And I want to tell you one more content, right? So the communication happening between the threads is something easier, okay? But if you are going to work with process, it will be more tough. You will be learning an operating system, a concept called context switching. Right? So using that, you will switch over between different process. But in the thread, it's not like that. It's not necessary actually. Thread will communicate with one another by their name and ID. It's very easy, right? But in operating system, if processes want to communicate, they must identify themselves, right? But that role will not be possible. They have to seek the permission of system software. Okay, OS will have a major role there. So they will identify the corresponding process. If they want to perform communication, they need separate data structures to communicate, right? So here it's not like that. I could able to communicate through my stacks and registers. It is enough. But Process-based multitasking, if I need to go over that, the communication could not be that much easier, right? So they have a lot of formalities. That's the major drawback in process-based multitasking. That's the thing, right? These are all the contents I want to brush it up. That's what I have given you. So multitasking, more than one task that I am performing in the single computer. Remember that. Multi-programming, keeping more than one program at a time in the RAM. Multi-processing, more than one CPU. Okay, please remember like that. Multi-threading, more than one flow of control within the same program. Okay, within the same program. These are all the four things that you need to remember, and see, you need to experience this also. That's the major thing, right? I would tell you, multi-processing, people who are having laptops, you could be able to experience it very easily, because nowadays laptops are coming equipped with cores only, right? It's not like olden days single CPU. Nowadays you are coming with a set of CPUs only. You have cores, quad cores, right? So multitasking you can experience through your operating system. Okay, multiprocessing you can experience through hardware. Multitasking you could be able to experience through your system software, operating system. Okay, multi-programming you can experience through your RAM size. Remember, RAM size. When you are going to increase your RAM size, ultimately the speed of your system will get to improve. The reason is the process of multi-programming is happening in a spurious way. The main one is multi-threading. This one can be done for any applications. Any applications. The three things what I have shown you or demanded you previously, those three terms are related to hardware and system software entries, right? System software entries. But the multi-threading is the concept which is purely rely upon our application software. In that I could able to achieve my parallelism, concurrency, whatever you want to do, you could be able to achieve in that, right? So that could be the major difference between multi-threading and the other three concepts, right? So by that we'll get into the actual content. I think this thread definitions already we have talked about a lot. Okay, it's a lightweight process. That's very important. Separate path of execution. If three threads are being created in a program, you are having three functions. I could able to allocate one thread to one function. They will take care of it, right? Modularity I could able to achieve. They are independent ultimately, okay? And also an advantage pertaining to our exception handling. Normally, in a program, if exception handling occurs, that will terminate and come outside with a proper message, right? But here it's not like that. For example, in the whole program, you are having some five functions. The exception handling occurred at function 2, right? The thread which was handling that function alone will get to be interrupted. Rest of the threads will run as usually. This is, you can see it practically when you are going to work with your programming, right? So do you understand that I am having five functions, I am having five threads. Unfortunately, second function have thrown some exception. Only the thread 2 will be interrupted. That's all. Thread 1, 2, thread 1, 3, 4, 5 will run as usual. The program will not be terminated because exception is nothing but the abnormal behavior generated during the runtime of the program. That behavior exhibitancy will be applicable only for thread 2. So thread 1, 3, 4, 5 will execute normally. The user don't feel that something have happened in the application. He could not able to uh, uh, switch over that. For example, in the railway reservation system, reservation separate module, cancellation separate module, TDS filing separate module, hotel booking separate module, car booking separate module, flight booking separate module. So likewise, these are all separate modules. If any one of the module get affected, it will not affect the whole IRCTC portal, right? So that could be the idea that I could able to employ my multi-threading in effectively. That's what I have seen already. I have mentioned you, right. It uses a shared memory area. The term is address space. The term they are mentioning as memory is nothing but it's going to be your RAM. This could be the state diagram of the thread. Right? I took it from a website. I found that this would be something will give you clear picture. These are all the states of the thread. What are all the states? So new, blocked, runnable, terminated, waiting, timed waiting, right? What is the order that I have to follow? That's also the major case, right? So the order will come like this: new, runnable, terminated. This is a normal order. Thread will be started and it's processing its content in the runnable mode, and it is going to be terminated after completing this job, right? So what would be the role of this concurrence in parallelism that can be identified over in these states? So when a thread is doing its job, I can make the thread to wait. That's what waiting. These many number of milliseconds you have to wait. That can be given over timed waiting, right? As well as in the waiting phase, you have one more thing. When multiple threads are working, I could able to go for such type of rate monotonic scheduling. What is rate monotonic scheduling? So I could able to go for these many number of time period only you have to execute. After that, you have to give space for this corresponding threading. The low level is nothing but a round robin scheduling, right? So that's also being applicable on this. Blocked, I will make a thread to stop, right? So when I have my methods to notify the thread can be resumed, right? So a thread can be created. After creation, it's going to be in the run state. After running, it can be terminated. Between that, we have two more states. The thread can be blocked. Again, it can move to the runnable state, and it can go to my termination state. As well as when a thread is created, while it was running, I could make the thread to wait. I could make the thread to wait for n number of seconds, milliseconds. That is also possible, right? These are all theoretical explanations of your thread. Practically, for implanting these techniques, what are all the methods we have? I think this diagram will give you the methods, right? So, newborn, nothing but the thread that you are going to create. So, how you will create the thread? Simple. Thread O equal to new thread. O is the object. That's all. I have created a thread. That is what newborn. I have to start the thread. Okay, I have to start the thread. That is the thing that will make my thread to activate. That's what start. Once it get into the activation state, you could able to see running, runnable. There are two states. Okay, running and runnable, because I could able to create thread in two ways for the purpose only it has been given. Okay, so scheduled threads, I think you could able to convey by this time only this thread has to run. That can be done from when it is going to switch over from runnable state to running state. After creating the thread, you could able to tell the thread this is the time that you have to start working. That can be done through scheduled. Okay, so yield that you could able to give back the state of your running, right? Or I could able to move the thread from, for example, you want to make the thread to stop. In that case, from running state you could not able to get it directly towards the dead state. For that, you have the method called yield that will help you to take it towards the stop method, right? Directly you could not able to stop a thread, so you have to go through the yield method, then only you have to go for stopping the thread. That will make the thread to die, right? Next, while the thread is going to run, what are all the ways to uh, wait the thread? So that can be done through the methods. Wait, that may goes for indefinite waiting also. Sleep, you can mention the milliseconds, how many milliseconds the thread need to sleep. Suspend, you can make the thread temporarily not to work. That's what suspend, right? So from suspend, you can send it to dead mode directly. The methods which are under wait and sleep, that can be resumed back using resume notify methods, right? So wait will be synchronized with notify, sleep will be resumed, will be mapped with resume, right? These are all the methods will supply. If more than one thread is there, if more than one thread is there, in that case, for example, you have created 5 threads, notify method will invoke the blocked thread one by one only. So I have to give 5 times notify method. For example, 5 threads that you need to make it from blocked state to running state. So I have to give 5 times notify method. Instead of that, you have a method called notify all. Using that method, I could able to get back all the threads to running state. Okay, so these are all the methods which are available inside the thread class, which will be helpful, can be synchronized with my corresponding classes. Okay, so that's the major case. This diagram will give you a clear picture on this. So how can I create thread in Java? By using two ways. Either you can follow any one of the style. That's your wish. Using thread or using thread class or using runnable interface. So using class you can create or using interface you can create. That is your convenience. Okay. These are all the constructors of the corresponding thread. So thread, I could able to run with the default constructor. I could able to name the thread. I could able to mention my state of the thread, right? I could able to mention the name and state of the thread. Both of the things that I could able to convey. These are all the four different constructors can be followed. We will see it in very detailing how we are going to use these constructors in effective way. These are all the methods that what I have shown you, right? So now you remember the names of the methods. That's enough. While you are going to see the program, you will see the functionality of the methods in a proper case. I think here you could be able to see run method. This run method is very, very important. Whatever the logic that you need to perform, that must be written inside run method. Please remember. See, in the exception handling, whatever the logic will perform, will you may think that the exception handling will occur. That will be written within try block. Likewise, here, whatever the logic that need to be performed parallelly, that must be written within the run method. For every thread, there will be a run method. Please remember. For every thread, there will be a run method. So, start, sleep, I am mentioning milliseconds, right? Join, so join threads. So we'll see that I could able to set the priority of the thread. I could able to give names for the thread. Okay, I could able to identify the thread. I could able to check whether the thread is live or not. Okay, I could able to suspend, resume. Whatever the methods that we have seen in the state diagram, everything will be available in terms of thread. I could able to convey a thread is working at the back end, right? Parallelly, two threads will work. I could able to identify this is the foreground thread, this is the background thread. I could able to do that. Right? Likewise, I could able to set daemon. Daemon is something but the background thread. Okay, I could able to interrupt the thread. So everything is available, right? Now, this is the first program. This is the first program. Please understand here. See, normally what I will do, I will create the object for the class. Using that object, I will access the method which is given inside the class, right? Here, you could able to see that I have created object T1 for the class multi. I have mentioned T1.start. That means thread was started, right? Thread had started its process. Multi-threading started in this place. Actually, here we have used only one thread. Here there is no much impact of multi-threading. I will show you in the later classes how multiple threads can be created and running in the same program. Here we have created only one thread. See that T1.start. Actually, what we will do, object name dot method. Method name is run. Instead of using run, I am using dot start. That means by default it will call that run method, because run method is built-in one which is configured for our multi-threading concept, right? See that T1.start. I have not called it T1.run. I have used T1.start. It represents that multi-threading as involved in the program. So for the whole program, I have extended my thread class. This is the first way, right? This is, I found this would be convenient always. Second one is using runnable interface. Here I have used a thread class as the first method. Second one, I could able to use runnable interface. This is also another way. So here what you have to do, as usual, you have to create the object. Again, what you have to do here, you have to create the object for thread again. Here you are using inheritance. So no need to do that. Already contents available inside thread will be packed with your multi. But here it's not like that. You are using only runnable interface, because within this runnable interface only, this run method was signatured. You know what is the interface, right? So within that we will have only signature. I can customize my method as per my convenience, right? So this runnable interface is having that run method. That is the reason why I have given that corresponding run. So again, what I will do, I will create the object. That object will be passed towards the thread class. Again, for the thread class, I will create the object. The thread will be started again. This should be a cumbersome job. To avoid that only, it's good to go with this class-based approach. If you are convenient to work with a interface-based approach, no issues, that you can proceed, right? So this is also the second way that move with multi-threading, right? So if you have any queries that you can ask, and if you have any things to post, you can post it over there. Thank you.